Welcome back to Straight Talk. We're back to our downsized panel of Mike Stock, Jessica Deere, and myself, Ross Montour. By the way, what we are looking for, it would be good, anybody in the community who wants to suggest somebody or would like to come on, we would like to have sort of a replacement. Hopefully, another woman from the community.
Hopefully.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
It would be nice to have another woman on the panel.
And it might be nice too to have somebody who is an elder also in that regard become part of this panel discussion. Look, I also want to mention too, and it's a sort of an awkward segue, but so if we're talking about elders and we talk about history and we talk about culture and politics in Ganawage, which is a community that's rich in that heritage. I did want to take a moment and mention and remember in passing this past week the passing of Mary Phillips, who was the wife of the late Joe Phillips, who was I think the last condoled Wolf Clan chief that we had in Ganawage. So her passing is a loss of that sort of collective body of knowledge, and so we want to send our sympathies out to the family and also wish Mary the best in the next stage of her journey.
Yeah, and on behalf of our company and you know, the same thing to her family. You know, it's going to be a loss. Yeah.
Speaking of traditions and so on. The issue of membership, as we know, this is going to be an ongoing thing, and we're going to be talking about this for some time to come here on Straight Talk because it is out there. And there are, of course, divergent views about the issue of membership. This past week, and by the time this show airs, on Wednesday, there will have been
15th,
September 15th, again, another information session on the history of membership in Ganawage.
So that's 3 info sessions that have now taken place.
Taken place,
And
with
Saturday,
one yet to come on Saturday.
18th, yeah.
I don't even know what time that one is going to be. So this one on Wednesday will have been in the evening. And
Yeah,
then
the ones on Saturdays are during the morning.
during the morning sessions, of
But
course, for people who are away.
Yeah, for if they want like exact schedules, they can visit ganawage.com.
What's I know that the purpose of the, I guess, the history is to let people know how we got to where we are today and why some of the decisions are being made today, to look for how is that going to fall into the law or into their draft, or however they want to put it later on when it comes to that for the decision-making process. But what do they want to get out of it other than giving the community information as to how the law got to where it is today?
It's such an interesting question because there is, you know what, I think if you said, well, we're going to have information sessions on the history, obviously there's a generation, a young generation now that comes into it. But if you talk to anybody who was close to our age, and between you and I, there might be a 10-year spread, but generally speaking, people they will all say, I know what the way it is and the way things are supposed to be, and the whole idea about who should be in Ganawage and all that stuff goes into history. And then you take that into account also, you take into account the fact that that long consultation process on the issue of membership that took place a decade ago.
Yeah.
And what was uncovered from there was the delineation of, the recognition of a custom. It became called a custom code. It never, to my mind, and to a lot of people who were, well, actually to the people who were involved in that process, didn't make it into the law in that way, and that the law somehow was made to fit the expectation of governments on the outside. But anyways, but people know, I mean, I think they know, and I don't know what will change, and as you said, the last time we talked about this on Straight Talk, is there always is the issue is what law will be enforceable under the existing status quo. I mean, we exist under the restrictions of Canadian law.
And you know what, and it's hard because I know at the end of the day that unless the community decides, or I don't know, you know what, I won't even say the community, because anytime there's something, it's never a community decision. It's based on the amount of people who are going to, if there's 15 people at that session, and then it goes to a community decision, and then there's 15, 20 people are going to decide whatever that law is. I still think that maybe a referendum, because then you're getting a larger amount of people that are going to go vote on it, and a referendum not attached to an election or anything else, just a referendum. That's the only way I think that you may get consensus somehow at the end of the day, but it still comes down to the fact that what if anybody can write a law, or anybody can write on paper, and this is what the majority of the people we spoke to, not the majority of the community, the majority of the people that we spoke to based on the questions we asked them can come to. But what if somebody doesn't follow that? That's what it comes down to all the
Well,
time.
always some people say, well, rules are made to be broken. You know, I mean, I'm not advocating that.
But you know what, and if you break the law, anywhere out of this community, there's consequences to it. What are the consequences here for it? You know what I mean? And what happens if somebody doesn't follow? Say, look, according to the law, even in the new one, that when it ever comes out, this is what the community has decided, now get the hell out because this is what we decided. So now the person says, I don't think that's gonna happen. First of all, you're not gonna come to my house and enforce it, because then if you come on my property, then I'm gonna end up charging you. You're not gonna charge you in our court, they're gonna charge you in another court. The police are gonna go and try to do the same thing, and there's so much problems with the enforcement issue. Like I said, you can spend all the money you want and put it on paper and have lawyers draft it and do whatever you want to make it look like it has teeth. But unless, and this is the hard part, unless the outside government decides that that's going to be the law, then how are they going to follow it? You know what I mean? And what are going to be the consequences and stuff like that? That's the only problem that I see.
Or does Ganawage create a situation whereby it is the master of its own canoe? And that's I mean just by your expression, I mean that's one that's fraud. I mean, it has difficulty in terms of logistically how do you arrive at that. But
because at the end, you know, at the end of the day, there's human rights, and even though you're living in a Native community, there's still human rights. Even though oral history says this is how we've been doing it all this long, this is what our elders wanted for this community, all these things, and I agree with how that. But unfortunately, in today's times, it doesn't always work.
But all right, but human rights. I think that in our own culture, we have. I mean, it's built on human rights. I mean, if you thought the pursuit of peace is about human rights, it can't be otherwise, Mike. So the thing to me is that we're caught framing all these things because of the Indian Act in the way that we are. We're Canada's human rights thing. You know what? Really, it's my belief. It's my view is that every people has a right to determine who the people are, and this is a different issue than saying who can live among us, because under the custom that existed once upon a time, and there was nobody said, here's the big book of the custom, okay? But people knew. It said, well, at one time, you had the Grand Chief talking about this recently, you needed a butcher, okay? That person didn't become Ngwehongwe, but it became somebody who lived among us. And so there was that thing, and so you have the thing about citizenship, but then you have the other thing is about identity, and that's where we've got to get to, I think,
and that's what I guess at the end of the day needs to be defined, and maybe some of the directions, like I said before, like in the last show, I said we need to piecemeal it. We need to take in pieces. Don't look at the whole law. Just let's deal with one thing at a time. Let's get over that and add something else. Get over that and add something else. If you look globally at the whole thing, we're 30 years from now, we're going to be back there, or 31. How many every years that we've been dealing with this? I mean, openly. Obviously, it's hundreds of years that this has gone through, and depending on who you talk to. One of the shows that I had done maybe a year or so ago with Billy Two Rivers, I don't know if you remember, it was on his back porch, and we talked about the history of, and I learned a lot by sitting there for that 1 hour about the Seaway and how logistically the communities had placed themselves along the water for attack and all, you know what, and how Montreal, it was so interested and I'm hoping that some of that is part of the history that they're telling, and it's not just the last 30-something years where the laws they're trying to get, but
I guess we'll have to go to find out if they discuss
Well,
that.
you know, but the process, Jessica, you are at a certain stage in this whole cycle of life going on in terms of this community. This goes back even before there was a Ganawagi. Okay, it's about who we are as a people that will continue the discussions, and as long as the debate continues. I mean, if you think about it on the positive side, the fact that we debate it, argue it, fight it, whatever, means that's the reason why we're still here. You know, it's why we're still here with a concept that we're Mohawk.
And you know what, and I understand that the end part, at the end of the day, there's other communities that haven't had this exercise that we're doing, and not in a good position.
No, they disappeared.
Some of their land has been sold to non-natives, or it's checkerboard, or today they're paying taxes on everything, or you know what? And there's a lot of horror stories for First Nation communities and Inuit that are out there that there's always been, and I don't want that happening here either.
Yeah.
But what do we do to resolve it?
Speaking of, you mentioned taxes, before we go to break, I mean, we talked about that last week, well, non-natives coming in here, just tax them. But you know, there's no such thing as taxation without representation, and that will become an issue. But we're going to go away for a moment from Straight Talk. We'll be back after these messages, so don't go away.